Right. Thank you for staying with Daybreak. The conversations always begin even during the break. So let me introduce my guest really quick. Professor Aman Manyora is here, political commentator. Asante sana for making time. Danstan Omari, advocate of the High Court, is also joining us here live in studio. Thank you for making time. We're still waiting for Joshua Kipto, Nandi County Assembly Speaker. Is joining us live from Eldoret. As soon as he logs in, we will definitely have him in the conversation. Let's start off with the Daily Nation. We have a lot going on here. 25 days to go to the elections. 10 counties to decide the winner. Prof, first of all, do you agree with the recent opinion polls? There was a TIFA poll and now there's the Infotrack poll.
Opinion polls are indicators of what's going on. They are not necessarily right. In fact, they are more useful to candidates than they would imagine, because even if you think there's some manipulation, but they tell a story. So it's up to you as a candidate to sit down with your team and see where to recalibrate and re-engineer your campaign.
Yeah.
They are pointers to what is happening, but not necessarily always right.
But if they're not necessarily always right, then why is there so much contention around it?
But you see, this is politics. This is a heated moment in the elections. And if someone tells you that you are behind your opponent, you are likely to come up guns blazing.
Yeah.
But they are an indicator. Like if you see what they are saying today, certainly Raila, in my thinking, is ahead of Ruto. In fact, much higher than what I'm seeing with opinion polls. So they are a good indicator. Many people will argue that, these opinion polls have always placed Raila ahead and he has ended up losing. The question is, at what point did he lose? You know, if opinion polls were saying Raila was winning in 2017, I think the Supreme Court confirmed that. So, but sometimes they lose about Hillary Clinton and Trump. They got it quite wrong. Sometimes they get it wrong, but they are an indicator. To me, opinion polls are an indicator of what could be going on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Omari, do you agree with this opinion, the latest opinion poll from Infotrack that indicates that Raila has maintained his lead against Ruto by 6 points?
Trevor, thank you very much. First and foremost, I totally agree with opinion polls because they are time specific. As of when that was done, Raila Odinga was ahead. As of 9th of August, anything drastic can change, and you find that the opinion polls that people are talking about do not reflect the 9th of August. For example, this is the last track. The last 20 days will completely change the energy you have seen the candidates put in place. The type of gear they are engaging will either confirm this or change. So in my own view, I think the opinion polls are very, very, very perfect because they are time specific. Kenyans and the whole world will say Clinton lost, Trump issue. That was because the opinion poll the night of the elections. For example, Trevor, I'm always in the campaign trail in West Mogrango constituency for Steve Mogaka, a member of parliament of Jubilee ticket. The changes are coming every day. Every day you go to a particular village, you think you are there. Your opponent gets there, or you get there, you manage to convince people. I take Professor, for example, to Nyamira for the campaigns. He will add value to my candidate, to the person I'm supporting. He can tilt the results, and therefore people should understand that the opinion polls are specific to the time.
Yeah.
But the reality is that 5 days before 9th of August.
Yeah, but Prof, does this play into the electorate's political psyche in any way? Are there those who will say, okay, now I was on this side where it seems this other team is winning based on the opinion poll, so let me shift? Does it have a bearing in how people vote, really?
In our context, not necessarily so. It engages a very small percentage of the electorate, you and I and above, and we are not that many. Eh? In America, it is everything. In Europe, and it's everything. They cling and hang on it as if it is life itself, even though they get it wrong. But it's everything. What the media says is important. I think here it only helps to boost the image of a candidate. Because we are now at the face of the election where image is everything. A few of the people that may tilt this election, the so-called undecided and opinion shapers who may push some people away from where they were and to another direction, could then be influenced by this poll, and in turn they influence the election among the undecided and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But in our context, in Kenya, I don't think they are that important.
But 16% undecided, Prof. Yes. And just before that, TIFA poll indicated 10%, at a 6 percentage difference point.
Yes.
Is that in itself a vote of no confidence? It's a huge number. 16% people who have not decided yet. There are 4 front runners. So how come they haven't decided? Is that in itself a vote of no confidence?
There are always factors why. For example, at some point in an election, an opinion poll was carried, or other opinion polls. Kalonzo Musyoka was still not sure where he was going. That will create a pool of undecided voters. At another point, Mother Karua had just joined. People who had been diehard supporters of Ruto, especially in Mount Kenya, were now like, what? You know, so there are always reasons why they are undecided voters. And once the issue has been sort of resolved, the Kalonzo Musyoka, the Mother Karua effect, then you begin to see that narrowing down. Yeah.
Yes. Omari, what do you think in terms of the 16% undecided voters, and just a few weeks ago it was 10%?
I'm saying politics changes like the weather.
Yeah.
One person, for example, as I've told you, one person can change minds on who he is supporting or who she is supporting every other one day because of who is there. For example, the diehard supporters of William Ruto, as Professor puts it, found themselves in a different scenario when Mother Karua comes in. Still, there are people defecting. If you look at the political terrain, William Ruto is taking some people from Azimio. Azimio is taking people from the Hustler Nation. Those determine where the voters are going to. Then there are those always the skeptics. The skeptics will decide the last day. There are people also who don't know who to vote for. They have never made their position. Even they cannot make a decision until the last day. They are told, let's go vote for so-and-so. So those will always be undecided, and they are likely to be 5 to 7% of people who will be told who to vote for on that day. For example, the greatest positioning was originally people could ask the village elders, who are we voting? Families could ask the father or the husband, who do we vote? Workers could ask the employer because they don't want to lose their jobs, who do we vote for? So these people make a critical mass, and that is why sometimes if that night of elections, the night of the long knives, people now, the undecided, happen to have been given direction that we are voting this way. When you find that the election results completely change. And that is what happens. For example, I'll give you an example. A narrative can be created on 8th that, oh, so-and-so has withdrawn from the race. Fake news. But that fake news is not countered. Then people believe that that is the true position, that Omari has pulled out of the race. What is the net effect of that? The opinion poll that had put Omari high, now this new issue, this new tsunami, this new earthquake that has been launched the night to the elections will completely tilt the election. So in my own view, I think that they are true indicators on how things are going. For example, at first, William Ruto was doing 70-60. There was no question about it. He was alone. Raila was doing 15-20. He had not shown any interest of campaign. When Raila started campaigning, you've seen the running mate issue, Gachagua versus Martha Karua, it made a serious issue. From yesterday, from this week, the president has gone now full throttle campaigning. That again will change the terrain. You've seen quite a number of everybody now is coming out. Those people who are hiding behind, who never wanted to come out, now they are coming out clearly. Opinion shapers are now saying, here is the direction to go. Yeah. So we are likely to see a dramatic surge in favor of Raila Odinga and a dramatic meltdown on the side of the Hustler Nation in terms of who is going to marshal the real critical vote that is going to be in deciding the leader of this country come the 9th of August.
But, Prof, that could go the reverse, right? I mean, the fact that the president is now actively campaigning, for Raila Odinga, people could rebel against that, depending on the people who say that sometimes it's a continuation of this regime which they are not happy with.
It is possible that that could harm Raila because people would have argued. But you see, that narrative has been there for a while. Yeah. And it has sort of faded and died naturally. The reason why that narrative of trying to present Raila as a project doesn't work, Raila has a history and is a man of his own. The moment you open your mouth to say Raila is somebody's project, even as the words come out of your mouth, even you yourself, you don't believe, so it doesn't quite stick. Secondly, Uhuru's campaign, if you notice, is well targeted. He's not just moving anywhere and asking for people to vote for Raila. He's targeting places of impact. And therefore, I do not think that Uhuru's support for Raila would injure him in any way. A few people say things, but you notice those things are no longer current.
Yeah.
If you don't even hear them.
But do you foresee a runoff?
No. No, not at all.
Omari?
Not at all.
There can be a possibility of a runoff. Scientifically, there can be a possibility of a runoff. Practically, it doesn't seem to be there. Why do I say that scientifically there is likely to be a runoff? The effect of Wajakoya is not an effect anybody is going to underestimate. I have told you I've been in the campaign trail every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm always on the campaign trail in West Mogrango constituency. That is where Wajakoya is not even supposed to be known. But you get to the people and you hear his name being mentioned. Then you ask, boss, who is that? A critical mass is following Wajakoya. And if Wajakoya takes more than 3 million votes, which is a possibility, we are likely to go a runoff. The reason why I'm raising the scientific approach to a runoff is that for one to be the president, he must get 50 plus 1.
Yeah.
Then he must get 24 counties to have 25%. That 25%, the two front runners will get. But the element of Wajakoya, the excitement he brings in, though much of the Wajakoya effect has taken much of the Ruto support. Much of the hustler people who were pro William Ruto now seems to be going towards Wajakoya. So in my own view, I think that that aspect can cause a flip something. Number two, when you look at what happened to Sonko, the Sonko factor that people had ignored, Sonko factor adds more punch to Raila Odinga. For example, now the coast region that looked waiting to know the direction it will go, the Nairobi region that was waiting to see where it will go, the Kamba nation that was looking for where to go, we are likely now to see a more solid Kamba block of voters coming into Raila Odinga's camp. We are likely to see a more youthful constituency of Nairobi young men and young women moving into Raila Odinga. When you add that, and as I've said, the president's touch, and you'll see probably the president might never campaign in Central Province. The president might be going to far-flung regions that have no issue with the perception that has been created of the presidents. For example, Samburu, Marsabit, Isiolo, the president will come to Nyamira, Kisii,
so
he'll go to Kuria.
He redefines his strong.
He redefines his, and that's what
base.
Prof said,
Yeah.
it is a targeted campaign. It's not a general campaign, especially where resentment is likely to arise. Yeah. He has already left Mother Karua to take control of the central region. In my own view, I think if the motion as it is continues, there's a likelihood of having Raila Odinga hitting a 58% and William Ruto doing a 42% or a 41% as Wajakoya gets a 3 or 2%.
But Prof, how come you're so sure that there won't be a runoff?
In order to be a runoff, mathematically even, one candidate must get sufficient numbers. I mean, the third horse, so to speak. Or is it a donkey? It must go away with some votes. More or less like what Kalonzo Musyoka got in 2007, number one. Number two, the difference between number one and two must also not be very significant. So that the moment somebody else comes in with about 7, leave alone 3 million. Even Wajakoya were to get, say, 800,000 votes, that begins to beckon the possibility of a runoff, especially if the difference between Raila and Ruto is not that significant. Now, why do I say there will be no runoff? For two reasons. One, Wajakoya is doing very well. He's my friend, doing very well. And it's caused excitement. But that excitement will not translate into votes. It's unlikely to be felt on the 9th of August. So I do not see him getting the kind of votes, and I'm not talking about 3 million that he's talking about. I'm talking about 700, 800,000 votes. Even
you
600.
Don't see him getting there.
He can't get there. Oh, certainly cannot get.
Maximum he'll get is what? By your prediction?
100,000. That he will really have tried. And that cannot cause a runoff. Secondly, it's now becoming clear that Raila is winning this election. And that image of a Raila winning the president is going to have the effect of swaying so many people to Raila that I can see, like Omari saying, Raila will win this election with such a comfortable margin that number 3 would have to get somewhere beyond 1 million votes. Because the difference between Raila and Ruto is likely to be about 1.5, 1.8 million votes.
Let me bring in Joshua Kipto now. Joshua is joining us from Eldoret. Joshua, before you joined in, we were talking about the opinion polls. What is your view, first of all, of the opinion polls? The latest one from InfoTrack, putting a 6 percentage point between Raila Odinga and William Ruto.
Okay, thank you very much, Trevor. And I want also to appreciate the fellow panelists on today's show. I think my opinion would be, as I said last week, opinion polls have a place. And from where we sit, I think it's a close race. This is a close race between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. And it's a dead hit. And I think if I'm to use the margin of error that they normally use, plus or minus 4. So it shows basically we are almost in a statistical dead hit if we were to believe on the same opinion. But from my interpretation, nothing has changed significantly. As it stands, even if you look at the number of activities, the movement and the campaigning, or even the campaigning style, Kenya Kwanza, I'll still place my bet on Kenya Kwanza slightly ahead of Azimio. I can appreciate that Azimio maybe has tried to catch up because we were way ahead of them. But as we stand at the moment, it's a close race, but Kenya Kwanza still stands head over shoulders of Azimio. That will be my interpretation. And you only need to have a look, and I'm happy Prof is there. You can ask him. Look at how Kenya Kwanza has been able to close out in places that were predominantly NASA in 2017 and CORD in 2013. If you talk about Western is now a battleground. It is no longer a unilateral support base for Azimio. That is, in fact, if you pick Bungoma, Kenya Kwanza will take Bungoma over Azimio. You go to Coast, that's why you see Azimio is in Coast this week. It's because Coast has equally shifted and it's also a battleground. It is where Raila has always been harvesting up to 70-75% of the vote. This time, if they hit 55, they would have done very well. So it's still a dead hit. Then predominantly, I think Mount Kenya, having not as a candidate directly from Mount Kenya, it would mean the deputy president is speaking from where Jubilee left it almost almost picking the same number of votes as Jubilee. There may be a slight difference, but not too much. And then Nairobi, in the absence of, for example, the Jubilee machinery of 2017, you would have expected Azimio would be way ahead in Nairobi, but that is not the case. If you look at even the gubernatorial position, the candidate for Kenya Kwanza, Johnson Sakaja, is polling much better than Igathe, and I don't think a voter will choose to vote for Johnson Sakaja and not vote for the presidential candidate, because unlike Azimio, you find that in the ballot you'll have UDA appearing, so that Johnson Sakaja will be running as a UDA candidate, and the same translates to the presidential candidate, that is the deputy president. So the moment you are able to close up and almost get the votes Jubilee got and be able to eat into the vote that Raila has traditionally been getting, that is why I would still put Kenya Kwanza as head over shoulder of Azimio. Raila has a lot of makeup to do when it comes to the votes he had in 2017 and making new inroads to the predominantly areas that voted Jubilee, and they have swung UDA. So this, for me, makes it an exciting race, close, competitive, but Kenya Kwanza is still ahead.
Yeah.
And then I don't agree with the case of a runoff. I don't think there will be a runoff. Wajackoyah will have his votes. Maximum I can give him is 4%, but nothing beyond that. 3%, 4%. And this one will be a protest vote. These are Kenyan voters who may not want to vote the traditional candidates that are there, because the deputy president and Raila Odinga are basically traditional candidates.
Yeah.
This is like the American version of Republicans and Democrats. You actually know that these two coalitions, these are their candidates. We know them, we've seen them, they have been in government, they have been in power.
Yeah.
But there is a voter who feels disaffected that I may not want the same faces. That is the voter that will vote with Wajackoyah, but very minimal and not more than 3 or 4%.
Yeah, and Prof, Kipto has raised a very interesting thing. Are we going to see a scenario of a mix and match of some sorts? For example, in Nairobi, it is true Johnson Sakaja has been polling ahead of his rival, Polycarp Igathe. So but Kipto says that people will not vote for Johnson Sakaja and not vote for the UDA presidential candidate. Are we possibly going to see a mix and match of some sort, or is it just going to be the 6-piece that always people talk about?
It takes time to understand the politics of Kenya. When 9th has come and we are on 10th, and you look at the results from Nairobi, then Kipto will know what I'm talking about. First of all, Sakaja is ahead by opinion polls. And that is as expected. Igathe was an abrupt candidate. Many people have called him a project. Perhaps he was. You know, indicators are, he was so abrupt. But you notice that Azimio has not said anything about Igathe. The moment Raila activates his machinery in Nairobi and moves in this town for 1 or 2 days, my friend, Sakaja will disappear. He will be whitewashed. There's no way Sakaja can win the election. Because look here, simple, and you don't even need to think hard. Igathe is a Kikuyu, is that right? This country, we vote on the basis and organize on the basis of tribe. Igathe is a Kikuyu. There will be people from that community who will vote for him on the basis of that alone. There will be people who will vote for him from his community, again, on the strength of Uhuru's persuasion of the community to vote for Raila, and by extension, Igathe. Now, Raila essentially controls Nairobi. The little change you could notice because of Mudavadi would not be strong enough to vary Raila's control of Nairobi, and no opinion poll has put him below 50%, okay, in terms of the control of Nairobi. So that tells you the moment Raila moves into this election in Nairobi, Igathe is already the governor of Nairobi. I foresee no possibility at all of one, Ruto beating Raila in Nairobi. That's like a miracle. And number 2, of Sakaja beating Igathe. There's no way, absolutely none. If you look at the demographics of Nairobi in terms of tribe and everything else, and what Raila does and what he controls, absolutely, how would he win? All Raila will need to do is to tell people, look here, we are voting for Igathe. That is enough. Then Uhuru, as he's moving those other sides that are demographically aligned to places where he can have some little influence, it means now we are already topping up Raila's traditional support.
Yeah.
topping it to beyond 55, 60. So Igathe will get more than 60% of the Nairobi votes.
Okay.
Yes, I don't
Is
see
that
how,
interpretation?
I don't see how. And let me say something else.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we say then we can forget. Going by what Kipto is saying, it is true that Ruto has eaten into Raila's stuff more than Jubilee did in 2013 and in 2017. That is true. Is that right? And if you look at the Daily Nation today, this battleground, it indicates that same story.
Bungoma, Vihiga, Trans Nzoia.
But what nobody can say, and with what I'm happy to hear Kipto is honest enough to say, is that Ruto has not upstaged Raila in those areas. You get it? So you may get more votes in Western than Uhuru got, but you have not taken control of the region from Raila. That is a fact. Now, if you were to work with that fact alone, then you will have to say, if Raila then is controlling the entire country except for Central and Rift Valley, for Ruto to beat Raila, he must then keep and lock Raila out of Mount Kenya. Has he done that? Even by his own admission, Kipto, and by the admission of everybody else, including opinion polls, Raila is already surging beyond the 30%. Under what circumstances can Ruto then win this election?
Omari?
Well, my
analysis
might be different from Prof and Kipto.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kipto from Eldoret, Speaker. The dynamics of Nairobi are completely changing daily.
Yeah.
Igathe comes in. Igathe comes in and gets a constituency that was predominantly a Raila constituency. Raila has been dominant in Nairobi with 10 or 15 Kikuyu votes, but he still has been winning. All through, Raila has controlled Nairobi without any Kikuyu vote. Two, now you bring in Igathe. This is the first governor candidate from the Mount Kenya region, specifically the Murang'a region, not anywhere else. When you look at the small-scale business people in Nairobi, around 70% come from the Mount Kenya region called Murang'a. When you look at the apex, the blue chip companies, the ownership, 80% comes from the Murang'a region. Many of the voters who come from Kiambu will vote in their county. Many of the voters who come from Nyeri will go to vote back in Nyeri. So you leave a very critical mass called the Murang'a people in Nairobi, where Igathe comes from. Number two, when you bring a new element, a new denominator in the parking lot called Mother Karua, you are talking of almost every lady who has a degree in Nairobi. They'll vote for Mother to the last person. Every graduate who has a degree, they are associating themselves to Mother Karua. That is an Igathe vote. Then you bring the element, the gender question, that is now a new dimension that has completely taken Kipto to the drawing board to deal with the gender question that Mother Karua brings in. Third, the aspect of foreigners, in quotes, people who are seeing Mother Karua as the epitome of constitutionalism and the rule of law and the defense of the attack on corruption. So you bring in those factors, then you have the president's nice words. The president's nice words comes in. This is now a question that you ask, what is the likely effect? Sakaja is ahead for now. As I've told you, Sakaja is ahead for now. When all this machinery is going to be brought to the fore. Because the question in Nairobi, if we go tribally, the only tribe that now has not defined itself in 100% where it is going is the Mount Kenya region. But I will correct my professor here that it's not 30%.
Okay.
question of Martha Karua has completely changed the landscape in the Mount Kenya region.
Okay.
And it is continuously going to change.
Yeah.
When now, because I've seen the CS for Interior, Matiang'i now is lobbying a very critical constituency called the Gusii people in Nairobi. Because in Kisii and Nyamira, now Azimio is doing around 80%. If that vote of Kisii and Nyamira, where Azimio is doing 70 to 80%, is translated in Nairobi, that is a full basket that Raila had never had as a full basket. Okay. So in my own view, Trevor, I think the dynamics are changing, and the Igade with Sonko coming in, as I said, the Igade that appeared on the interview will be a different Igade within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, I have to take a quick break, but keep when I come back, I'll give you a chance to respond to this. But keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV. Can you use the hashtag Daybreak? When we come back, we talk about IBC. Yesterday, Wafula Chebukati spoke to the members of the press, and there were a lot of issues that came up: issues of trust, issues of transmission, issues of the court cases, the ballot paper printing company Lycos, intimidation, and profiling of the staff. We'll talk about that also in just a bit, right? See you shortly.